welcome back. I missed you. I'm glad you could come back and join me again for another Christmas video just for you from Bloomer and New Auburn United Methodist Churches here in the state of Wisconsin. Hey, if you are not familiar with Bloomer and New Auburn, I had a cool way to show you. If you're from the United States and you know your states, or you've looked at a map, there's one way to tell where Wisconsin is. It looks like a big old mitten, okay? So it looks like this. This is the state of Wisconsin. This is over where Green Bay is, in case you're familiar with American football and the team called the Green Bay Packers. That's over where they are, okay? This is Door County. Bloomer and New Auburn are right over here, okay? On my knuckle here. That's about it, in the mitten. They're over in this direction, okay? Does that help you figure out where we're at? If not, that's okay. I thought it was just a fun way to kind of give you an idea where I'm at. I'm here back in Bloomer's sanctuary again. Can you see our Christmas tree behind me? Isn't that pretty? And that bright light up there, that's a lit cross. Here, let me show you just a second. Ooh, isn't that beautiful? I love it in here. It's very peaceful. Oh, and look, down here, back there, those are statues of baby Jesus and his mom Mary and his earth dad Joseph. Remember, I told you the left-right story and you were spinning, and those are some of the people that we talked about, and we talked about baby Jesus's birth, right? Well, today I'm gonna read you a story from a beautiful book. Oops, it's backwards for you, but let me tell you the story, or the title. It's called A Max Lucado Children's Treasury, the child's first collection. And I own it, because even if I don't look like a child, I still act like a child sometimes. So I love children's stories. And so today's story, I'll show you the picture, okay? It's called The Crippled Lamb, and it's by Max Lucado with Jenna, Andrea, and Sarah Lucado. Helped him write it too. It's illustrated by Liz Bonham, okay? And this, my friends, is going to be a story about the animals that got to witness Jesus's birth and got to know him right away when he was born as a little baby, okay? And as I read, I will lift up the book after I've read part of it, and I will show you the beautiful pictures because they are gorgeous, okay? So are you ready to listen? Once upon a time in a sunny valley, there lived a little lamb named Joshua. He was white with black spots, black feet, and sad eyes. Josh felt sad when he saw the other lambs with snow white wool and no spots. He felt sad when he saw the other sheep with their moms and dads because he didn't have a mom or a dad. But he felt saddest when he saw the other lambs running and jumping because he couldn't. Josh had been born with one leg that didn't work right. He was crippled. He always limped when he walked. Can you see? There's Josh, and there's all the rest of the sheep. That's why he always watched while other lambs ran and played. Josh felt sad and alone, except when Abigail was around. Abigail was Josh's best friend. Do you have a best friend that loves you just as you are? She didn't look like a friend for a lamb. She was an old cow. She was born with white blotches that looked like rain puddles on a path. Her belly was as round as a barrel, and her voice was always kind and friendly. Some of Josh's favorite hours were spent with Abigail. Can you see her? There she is. And there's Josh hanging out with his best bud. They loved to pretend they were going on adventures in distant lands. Josh liked to listen to Abigail tell stories about the stars. They would spend hours on the hill looking into the valley. They were good friends. But even with a friend like Abigail, Josh still got sad. It made him sad to be the only lamb who could not run and jump and play in the grass. That's when Abigail would turn to him and say, "Don't be sad, little Joshua. God has a special place for those who feel left out." See? There's Josh and there's Abigail looking at the stars. Josh wanted to believe her, but it was hard. Some days he just felt alone. He really felt alone the day the shepherds decided to take the lambs to the next valley where there was more grass. The sheep had been in the valley so long, the ground was nearly bare. All the sheep were excited when the shepherd told them they were going to a new meadow. There are the shepherds taking their sheep. As they prepared to leave, Josh hobbled over and took his place on the edge of the group. But the others started laughing at him. "You're too slow to go all the way to the next valley. Go back, slowpoke. We'll never get there if we have to wait on you. Go back, Joshua." All those mean sheep. Poor Joshua. That's when Josh looked up and saw the shepherd standing in front of him. See? Shepherd standing in front of him. "They are right, my little Joshua. You better go back. This trip is too long for you. Go and spend the night in the stables." Josh looked at the man for a long time. Then he turned slowly and began limping away. When Josh got to the top of the hill, he looked down and saw all the other sheep headed toward the green grass. Never before had he felt so left out. A big tear slipped out of his eye, rolled down his nose, and fell on a rock. Just then he heard Abigail behind him, and Abigail said what she always said when Josh felt sad. "Don't be sad, little Joshua. God has a special place for those who feel left out." Slowly, the two friends turned and walked to the stable together. Can you see all the sheep going to the meadow? And Josh and Abigail getting ready to go to the stable. By the time they got to the little barn, the sun was setting like a big orange ball. Josh and Abigail went inside and began to eat some hay out of the feed box. They were very hungry and the hay tasted good. For a little while, Joshua forgot that he had been left behind. "Go to sleep, little friend," Abigail said after they finished eating. "You've had a hard day." Josh was tired, so he lay down in the corner on some straw and closed his eyes. He felt Abigail lay down beside him, and he was glad to have Abigail as a friend. Num-nums, sharing supper together. Soon Josh was asleep. At first he slept soundly, curled up against Abigail's back. Then in his sleep, he dreamed. He dreamed of running and jumping just like the other sheep. He dreamed of long walks with Abigail through the valley. He dreamed of being in a place where he never felt left out. Suddenly, strange noises woke him. "Oh my goodness, what's going on?" "Abigail," he whispered, "wake up, I'm scared." Abigail lifted her head and looked around. The stable was dark except for a small lamp hanging on the wall. "Somebody is in here," Josh whispered. They looked across the dimly lighted stable. There, laying on some fresh hay in the feed box, was a baby. A young woman was resting on a big pile of hay beside the feed box. Joshua looked at Abigail, thinking his friend could tell him what was going on, but Abigail was just as surprised as Josh. Look, there's the young woman and the baby, and Josh and Abigail. Josh looked again at the woman and the child, then limped across the stable. He stopped next to the mother and looked into the baby's face. The baby was crying. He was cold. The woman picked up the baby and put him on the hay next to her. Josh looked around the stable for something to keep the baby warm. Usually there were blankets, but not tonight. The shepherds had taken them on their trip across the valley. Can you see Josh trying to comfort the baby? Then Josh remembered his own soft, warm wool. Timidly, he walked over and curled up close to the baby. "Thank you, little lamb," the baby's mother said softly. Soon the little child stopped crying and went back to sleep. About that time, a man entered the stable carrying some rags. "I'm sorry, Mary," he explained. "This is all the cover I could find." "It's okay," she answered. "This little lamb has kept the new king warm." "A king?" Joshua looked at the baby and he wondered who he might be. "His name is Jesus," Mary spoke, as if she knew Josh's question. "God's son. He came from heaven to teach us about God." Can you see? Josh has a very important job, doesn't he? Just then there was another noise at the door. It was the shepherds, the ones who had left Joshua behind. Their eyes were big and they were excited. "We saw a bright light and heard the angels," they began. Then they saw Joshua next to the baby. "Joshua, do you know who this baby is?" "He does now." It was the young mother who was speaking. She looked at Joshua and smiled. "God has heard your prayers, little lamb. This little baby is the answer." The shepherds came back, and there's Joshua by the baby still. Joshua looked down at the baby. Somehow he knew this was a special child, and this was a special moment. He also understood why he had been born with a crippled leg. Had he been like the other sheep, he would have been in the valley. But since he was different, he was in the stable, among the first to welcome Jesus into the world. Amazing, isn't it? He turned and walked back to Abigail and took his place beside his friend. "You were right," he told her. "God does have a special place for me." There he is. Bye, Abigail. Well, friends, thank you for listening to the story. God also has a special place for you. Even if sometimes you don't feel like you fit in, or if there are people that are mean to you, laugh at you, just remember that God has a special place for you, and sometimes it's laying next to the King of the world, the King of heaven, the King of life. All right, friends, I'll see you next time. Bye.